Good evening, everybody. My name is Matt Rollins, Executive Director with the Hawaii State Junior Golf Association, and I would like to welcome you all to the HSJGA Sports Science webinar, basically kind of the first of its kind. We have been running some college education webinars and some rules education webinars over the last few months. And so a little bit of a new direction, but I hope that this maybe gives you some ideas for things that you can be doing outside of the game of golf and perhaps while we're all stuck at home. So I'm really happy to introduce today David Derbyshire. Basically, I have a little bit of David's background here, and he worked for the Victorian and Australian Institute of Sport, and then he's kind of transitioned to movement, rehab, and strength and conditioning coaching over the last kind of 25 years, and he's been working recently with a few PGA Tour players that you would know. I think, David, you spend most of your time with Adam Scott, but we have KJ Choi and Aaron Baddeley in the mix there as well. So thank you very much for being here with us, David.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for the invite. It's nice to actually be able to talk a bit of golf, I think. It's interesting times for everyone. I know everyone's at home and sort of limited with what access they do have to golf courses, etc. So this may give you a little bit of insight into what you could do at home in this period of time, and my background, and what's, how I see things going, and what you could do to improve your game.
And so thanks for that, David. And you reside on the Big Island right now, correct?
Yeah, I've been on the Big Island now coming up 10 years. So I live in a little artist town called Holualoa and travel on the PGA Tour from here, which is not exactly the easiest thing to do, but I love coming home. And my wife has been here 15 years, so yeah, we have a great life here, and I really enjoy it.
Awesome. And David and I were talking a little bit last week, and you were basically on tour, on the road with Adam Scott for most of the year in past years, and I think you've cut it down to 20 weeks a year now.
Yeah, I guess my journey started on the tour when I was 26 and got, I guess, poached out of Australia to go live with KJ Choi, and I lived with him for 5 years in Houston, and then picked up a couple of other players while I was out there in Baddeley, Nico Hearn. And then Adam poached me away, and we started traveling together. And initially we were traveling 48 weeks a year for the first 3 years, sorry. So we were in each other's back pockets, pretty much. And over time, we had a lot of success in that time. Then we took a little break, and now we're back together, and we're down to about 20 weeks a year, which suits us both pretty good because we both now have young families and we're a little older and wiser. So yeah, it's developed in a positive way, I guess.
Yeah, and I think a lot of our listeners on the line and our members, they're kind of used to working with a swing instructor, and what you'll begin to see, I think, is a lot of these tour professionals have a team around them now. So you're basically a big part of Adam's team moving forward, and some of those other top PGA professionals. And I guess what we did is asked some of our members some questions. And so the first question here is, what is it like to be on tour with Adam Scott, and what would your typical day look like?
Well, I'm pretty fortunate that I guess Adam is one of the nice guys on tour, and always has been, and we share similar interests. So we both like surfing, etc. So we get along extremely well outside of golf. Traveling with Adam is pretty easy. Everything's already organized, and we kind of just roll. Typical day. So over time, we've sort of worked out that for now, Adam has 4 main goals a year pretty much, and that's the 4 majors. So everything revolves backwards from that. So what we do is usually go into a 2-week camp before each major with this swing coach who comes in at the 2nd week. So I'll go in the first week, swing coach and myself there the second week, and then we go to the major in the third week. And we try to get in a routine of keeping everything exactly the same. So that when we get to the major, nothing's changed. We're used to what we're doing for 2 weeks, and we just go from there. And it seems to, as of last year, and the results we had last year at the majors worked pretty well, and we've already kept that through this year. And we did it before LA this year, and he was able to get the win. And we've taken that approach ever since he sort of drifted out to about 70 in the world, and now he's back to 6. So we've kind of found a formula that works for him. A typical sort of pre-season, or not a what we call a pre, I guess, major camp is we all get up, get breakfast together, sort of talk about the day and what we did yesterday. Then we'll warm up in the gym, then we'll go putt, and we get in. This is pretty much the same every day. Go putt, then we'll hit pitch shots, then we'll hit some full shots, then we'll go play some holes, and that's all before lunch. Have lunch, then we'll reset the body, so do treatment, make sure everything's okay, and then we'll go to the gym. After the gym, we then usually do recovery. So they're kind of long days from 9 to 5, but we kind of space it out and get everything done, and it seems to work pretty much all the time. It works pretty well for us.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about your approach to assessing a golfer or an athlete and determining where they need your support?
Sure. So, in golf or in, you sort of, or other sports, you fit in between technical coaching and etc. So you provide a platform for movement, or what I like to say, blank canvas for a technical coach to then paint on. So when I think about golf or sport or anything like that, I usually work a bit backwards. So I'll try and work out the activity, what's repetitive in the activity, because I know over time the body will change as a result of repetition. And that's a big thing for us, and it's a big thing of why Adam has never missed an event due to injury, is we combat repetition. We don't try to strengthen the golf movement pattern, and we never have, and we never will. We try to get him back to what we call zero. So zero, start every day. It's just a blank canvas. So it's a tough one, but you basically then look at the movement of the sport, what's repetitive. That's something you want to get rid of. You look at someone's movement history over time, what other movements they've done that are repetitive. You want to try and get rid of those, and you'll always try to look for the first thing they ever did in their career, because that will dictate to the second. You look at injury history, and then you can sort of start to map out this puzzle. And the ultimate goal is to get the body back to being where it should be before the sport was ever played. And then the sport actually becomes very easy from then. Unfortunately, it's not the most sought after approach, or because it's a tough one to explain, because when you deal with a repetitive sport, taking it back, if something is repetitive, you must do something the other way repetitive to get it back to zero. So it's sort of Groundhog Day every day. That's just unfortunate. That's the nature of repetition. But it becomes kind of boring for the athlete. If you go where most people go to try and strengthen the motor pattern, well, that doesn't work, because all you do is add load to the motor pattern itself. You never take it out of it. So we go for a little bit different a philosophy, and usually I don't really talk about this because this is our little secret that we usually go with, and it always seems to work for us. So whoever's out there listening right now is getting a pretty big insight into why Adam still swings it good and why Adam is pretty healthy.
Love it. Okay, what are some of the best warm-up or stretching exercises, and how much time in advance from your round should you be doing them?
Yeah, so we're obviously dictated to by tee times, and then from there we'll work backwards again from the tee time. Usually we'll do a little bit of movement. We don't do a lot of stretching, and we can do that in another session. I can explain why we don't do a lot of stretching, but we do a lot of movements that'll just get the body warmed up. If you do a lot of stretching, you can actually change the position of certain joints, and then it takes a long time or more time than what it would in just playing golf to work out where the body's at and the feel of the golf club, etc. So we don't do a lot of stretching at all. We know every morning, because we do our treatment last thing on the day before, that the body's at zero. So he's ready to go the next day. So once he's ready to go the next day, it's just some exercise to warm up, dynamic movement, a little bit of bike riding. And our warm up typically is 20 minutes maximum, 10 minutes of riding, 10 minutes of moving, done. And then you'll have breakfast. So we give the body a little bit of chance just to settle down, and then we'll go to the range. If that's a morning, if it's morning tee time, if it's an afternoon tee time, then that differs a little bit. But usually that's, for us, it's an hour. We start warming up 2 hours before we tee off. And that gives us enough time to putt, chip, bunker play, hit some full shots, a little bit more putting, and then straight to the tee. Adam is it's a little bit short of the average. Most guys are probably, I would say, 2.5 hours before. We like to get things we don't, and that, I mean, if we know where he is at the start of the day, then we know we don't need much time to get, I guess, what we call the Ferrari revved up.
So I guess for some of our members that are traveling to tournaments, maybe don't have access to a bike or some of the facilities that a tour player would, what are some dynamic movements that they could be doing prior to their round or that morning when they arrive at the golf course?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have access to a bike, you can do some run throughs and so forth. A little program of just doing skips and jumps, and I guess the audience here are all pretty young and dynamic, or should be. So that gets the heart rate going. Then you can do some things like lunges. I'll give you another little insight. We do not do any rotational work before playing golf. And actually, I'll give you another little insight. We don't have any rotational work inside his gym program. And that's a whole nother conversation. We try to stay away from rotation because we know that he's getting so much rotational work just from playing golf. So it's an interesting sort of conversation you can have with a lot of people, because a lot of people think that you need to get stronger. Well, I can save that for another session. Some lunges, and I'll just quickly think about what we do. We can do some straight line lunges. We do some squats. We do some floor work just to get things fired up in the trunk. We do some pushing, some pulling, some very generic exercises, and that's about it. And that can all be done by anyone with some bands that can fit in a door, fit to your golf buggy, fit to the cart, whatever it be. It's a really hard question for me to answer, and I've never been able to really do it that well because I'm very individualized for a person. But to give a general answer, because that movement may not be good for you, but it may be good for someone else. So I try not to go down the path of a recipe format, and I hope no one else out there sort of does either. You really need to make this individual for you and your history, your movement history, and your injury history to get the best out of your body to play golf.
I think that's great advice there. Next question would be, how does your work with an elite golfer differ from other athletes? We noticed that you've spent some time with Lance Armstrong, and I'm sure many others.
Yeah, the approach is very, very similar to most sports. Most sports are repetitive in nature. There's very few that you cannot find repetitive motor patterns in. A big thing for us is to get those motor patterns out of the body. So the stuff in the gym, you gain full advantage of, knowing that the body is at zero to gain that advantage, and the body's at zero to gain the advantage of transfer to the golf swing or other sports. So the approach is very, very similar. Cycling, let's say, that's a repetitive sport. You sit on, you grip handlebars, you are locked in with pedals, and you do the same motion over and over and over again. Well, that body will change over time to that motion. Now, as soon as you get off the bike, you're in a different world. You have to adapt to gravity and standing vertically. So there are things you need to do to get back to zero off the bike, as same with golf. Golf to me is a gripping sport. You grip a club. First, that's the first movement of a golf swing, is actually holding a club. So your hands, these are the most important things. It's not a rotational sport, it's a gripping sport. These become the most important things for a golfer, that these are okay. Now, talking to a young, and I'll quickly touch on this, talking to a young group of people who like phones, who like video games, etc., be very, very careful. Those can affect your golf game just through repetition. These need to have full function to be able to grip a club properly and then work through the golf swing. So I know there's a lot of downtime for you guys at the moment away from golf and trying to find things to do, but if I can give you one bit of advice out of this whole session, it's just to minimize the amount of time you play video games and stay on your phone, because I've seen it with pros that like to go down that rabbit hole and they don't play anymore.
Okay, what are the most common injuries in golf and possibly the best ways to prevent them?
The most common injuries you'll see, and I've been very lucky with all the golfers. I've had one golfer miss one tournament in 20 plus years because with a bad back, and he just leant over to pick up his kid out of the bathtub. But backs are usually the biggest thing. Unfortunately, the lower back is not usually the problem. It usually comes from somewhere else. Elbows, wrists, you can get from collision base, because it is a collision based sport with the ground, and necks usually. But you'll find a lot of injuries for golf will come about from someone when they're not playing golf. So you take a golf repetitive movement pattern, you don't get rid of it, but you enter the real world again and go back to try and move or do something else. That's when an injury occurs. So to combat the injury, and I've said this a number of times already, you need to get back to zero. So you need to get out of your golf pattern so that you can exist in the world outside of golf. So you can't ever let your sport dictate your life. You should be able to go into your sport, come back out, and the body be exactly the same. So you just reset it. You go surfing, and we know, and surfing and golf aren't two very good sports to mix at all, because they're both repetitive. And that's for another conversation. But go to surf, you come out of surfing. You go ride a bike. If that's repetitive, you come out of riding a bike. So you can put all these little things into play, just a couple of little exercises every time you go to do these activities, to know that you go back to zero, that injuries just won't occur. Golf is a non-collision based sport, so that there shouldn't be any injuries in my world. You should be able to combat it so that you stay healthy pretty much all the time.
Gotcha. Okay, how often should you work on strength and conditioning each week? Just basically with that mindset that you don't overdo it.
Yeah, we have, you can have two philosophies or two outlooks at this. So every time I have a golfer play golf, they'll always do something after golf, and you can call it strength and conditioning, you can call it whatever you like, but you have to combat the golf. So if you play golf, always combat the golf. Then you have your development side of the program in terms of trying to get better at movement or stronger or whatever it be, and then you can get a transfer back. Typically for a golfer, you could do 4 to 5 sessions, depending on what other sports you play, your injury history, etc. But then you add in, if you're playing golf 4 times and then 5 times a week, practicing maybe 5 times, and you're doing all the combative work afterwards as well, it becomes a lot. And then you think about recovery. You have to be kind of careful. The most important thing, rather than going down the strength and conditioning route, is just to combat the amount of golf you do. So if you just relate it to, let's say, a bicep curl that everyone may have done in their life, the golf swing is just a bicep curl. It's a repetitive movement. Now you're going to do 500, let's say, golf or bicep curls a week. Let's say if you do 500 swings, and that's being pretty low key for an average person who wants to get better. 500 swings a week, that's 500 bicep curls you just did that week that you have to combat. So you can see how it changes your body over time, that you don't want that to happen. Because then if you do go to a gym scenario, the likelihood of you getting injured in that gym scenario and not being able to access that strength and conditioning program to your best of ability, that can't occur. So the most thing I can stress out about it is it's not really what you do in the gym, it's can you do it in the gym? And most golfers need to be able to transfer from a golf body to be able to perform those skills in the gym. And that's where you need to combat the golf.
And you touched on this a little bit just in that question, but do you recommend that our members do play other sports? I know there's a little bit of kind of controversy around that, and I think some publications around the importance of playing other sports, and then there's also early sports specialization amongst a lot of golfers. So what is your philosophy on that?
I would like everyone to be able to do anything at any particular time if they can. And this is what people ask me, what are you, what do you want to be? I want to be a generalist. And that generalist meaning that I want to be able to ask my body to do anything at any moment in time, any activity. So if you tell me I want to go play tennis, I can play tennis. If you want, I should be able to do it all. That's what the body was designed to do. Now we designed all these sports because we wanted to have fun. So we changed the landscape for what the body is basically designed for. So early specialization, I don't technically agree with at all. I think you should be able to play other sports as long as you can play other sports. And that gets back to this movement history. If I was a surfer and I surfed for 10 years before taking up golf, then I know I've got repetitive movement patterns from paddling, which is a big thing. Now you're asking me to go play another sport which involves a different pattern. Well, now you're going to have conflict. So I would say to everyone, play other sports, just make sure that you can play other sports. And that's where people like myself or someone else has to come into play to be able to educate and illustrate the transfer between being able to do it and not being able to do it, or more than likely you're going to be able to do it, just the high risk of injury going to do it. So I'm all for trying anything, anytime.
Are there any specific sports that you would kind of push golfers towards, or does that just depend on who they are and what they can handle?
We used to, at the Institute of Sport, we used to get our golf program to practice with our baseball program. And the reason why we did that was, and if you ever play golf with Major League Baseballers, ice hockey players, they hit the ball far. Most guys hit the ball far. And that's because you actually get an understanding of how to create force against a moving object as opposed to a stationary object. So golf, that ball's just sitting there waiting for you. The other ball is actually moving. So you have to actually try to feed the opposite into that ball to make it go somewhere. So it is actually, if I was going to say there's one sport, baseball and golf actually, or another ball generated sport, tennis or anything like that, is another good sport to be able to understand how to create power. And then it's actually easier to do with a stationary ball.
Awesome. I guess for everyone at home and kind of in this unique time, are there any exercises or anything like that you would recommend for everyone during this time, just so that they don't kind of lose their golf games and they can work on their strength and conditioning at home?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interest. That's a tough one again because of the recipe format, but maybe there's a couple of things I could forward on to you that you could give to the members. Just a couple of little exercises, which I know golf will change the body. So a couple of little, I guess, little secrets I can give to pass on that I know will help combat golf. It's hard for me to explain them, but I can maybe send you a handout to forward on. But just keep moving. I think it's a good time to explore other things and do other things. Golf obviously takes a lot of time. If you want to practice golf, I guess, and the whole mat net setup or anything, sheet, whatever it be. But in terms of strength and conditioning and movement, just do anything. Go for a run, go for a walk. I mean, I guess this time's putting a lot of things in perspective for a lot of people, but just try to stay healthy, eat good, move, lay off the phone, lay off the video games. That's my advice to a young athlete right now.
I just had a question come in just now. How would a junior golfer go from where they are today to the PGA Tour or LPGA Tour? I know that's kind of a loaded question.
Yeah, that's a tough one. The coming from Australia, we have a very big luxury of having state institutes of sport, state programs, and Australian Institute of Sports, which are all government-funded bodies that provide pathways to athletes. And so, if you look at the era of Adam Scott, Jeff Ogilvy, Aaron Baddeley, Stuart Appleby, and I'm reeling off Australian golfers here, they all came through these programs. And obviously that's what you're trying to do, is create this program and feed these kids. So, there's going to be stepping stones, I guess, for Americans, American-based athletes, Hawaiian-based athletes. Getting into a college is a very good stepping stone because you become part of a college team and you get an understanding of, and you also have services provided to you at colleges that sort of put you in an education capability for what it's like then when you get out on tour. And you can obviously see right now these young guys, Matt Wolf, Colin, etc., who are all coming out of colleges right now straight into the PGA Tour and winning. Golfers are getting younger. It's getting younger. It's a young person sport now, whereas before the winners were sort of early 30s, mid 30s. It's now 20s, early 20s. So it's getting younger and younger. So, obviously working hard, try to get involved in some programs, seek out people like myself. There's no harm in trying to work out, see what a pro does, see what you can actually put into place yourself. It's an individual sport. But for example, I had a kid find me here who was a young surfer when he was 12. And he found me on the internet, called me and said, "Can you help me?" He's a local kid here. And I thought his parents had put him up to it, et cetera, but no, he actually just went about it himself. And I'd never had a sort of person do that. And he was, I've been helping him since. He's now 17 and he's won a lot of contests. But, I think you got to take a little bit, especially in this time, to research. You could research a lot right now into who could help you, because there are people out here like me that actually can help you for sure.
Okay, great. Another question here. You've mentioned being at zero quite often. So how important is it to monitor your body and its recovery process? And then also, just in addition to that, how do you manage or work out after an airplane flight versus getting ready for round one of a tournament?
Sure. So you have mechanical recovery and then you have physiological. Mechanical meaning movement, physiological what happens inside the body, so all these processes. The mechanical recovery is just getting back to zero, so you just put a little plan in place and you just do that every day. Initially, you're going to have to do it a lot because you've probably done golf a lot the other way, so you have to do it a lot just to get back. But over time, and I'll give you an example, it took me treating Adam every day for a year since last January to this February to getting back to being at zero without my help, and that took a year. But that's a guy that hits a lot of balls, and that's a guy who practices a lot, etc. Physiologically, monitoring and mechanical recovery, extremely important to know how much energy you've got, because you want to be able to be at zero mechanically and zero physiologically to know you're the freshest you are to be able to go practice golf. There's no real point playing or practicing at all under fatigue because it doesn't really equate to anything. And if you can take that approach, then you know during your pro days that, and we've done hydration monitoring, we've done a whole bunch of stuff over the years to work all this out. But both of them become very important. But there's a little bit of contradictory with the word recovery, okay? And you can, if you come up with a plan where you can put 40 things on the table that help your recovery, then that's great. And so then you just randomly choose them, because if I say to you, go do a recovery session, that's me saying you go do more work. That's not really the aim of recovery. The recovery is to be able to switch off from all that stuff and relax and set it back. So you've got to be careful on how you schedule recovery. You don't want it to be really another session mentally, because that just creates another problem, that it's too much work. So you've got to make recovery almost fun with a little twist and so forth to keep it interesting.
Gotcha. And I know you want to give back to junior golf, and that was kind of why you reached out to me a little while back, and I really appreciate that. And I think the intent here is to maybe dive into some of your philosophy and what you've been through, maybe over the next couple of months here, and some of our members can learn a little bit more from you. But just for today, is there anything else that you want to maybe leave our viewers with?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. It's I sort of started this whole thing with juniors and coaching young guys at our institutes, and it's sort of that's a big passion for me. So it's about time I got back into that. So I'm excited to do some stuff for sure, and be able to educate and illustrate and just sort of help provide a pathway for all you guys out there that want to get better. No matter what sport it is, it can be golf. You can take my approach and apply it to a lot of different things, and it'll work. That's for sure.
Yeah, and in our conversations the other day, I think we both realized that there's a lot of competitive golf, and kind of it's event focused and that type of thing. And this is kind of a whole new area that we can really dive into. So, David, I just wanted to say a big thank you to you on behalf of the Hawaii State Junior Golf Association and our members on the line today. We are recording this session, and we will post it on our website for our members to view. And I do hope that you will be able to join us again. So thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks a lot. And if anyone has any other questions, they can forward them on to you and send them over. And I've got a fair bit of time at the moment to answer, so I'm happy to do so.
Right on. Well, we appreciate that. And for everybody on the line today, just a reminder that Mary B. Porter King and Ryan Toole will be running a rules session again tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. And if you check your emails, you'll see that there's an RSVP link there for you. So take care, everyone, and stay tuned for more information from the Hawaii State Junior Golf Association. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, David.